Hello everyone, this is Marshall Gittler bringing you the outlook for the week of May 22nd to 26th. The main events this week are political, not economic, although there are some important economic data coming out. But that will probably be overshadowed by Trump's first visit abroad as president, a meeting of NATO leaders, an OPEC meeting, and finally a G7 meeting. Well, the Grand Trump Tour starts this weekend as Trump visits Riyadh for 2 days of meetings with the heads of state of Saudi Arabia and other Muslim-majority countries. Then Monday and Tuesday he goes to Israel, where he'll visit with leaders on both sides of the conflict. You can imagine the possibilities for gaffes and mistakes during these visits. And just to round things out, on Wednesday he'll go to Rome to meet with the Pope. I hope all these visits go well. Thursday, he meets with the European Union and European Council presidents in Brussels, then takes part in a NATO leaders meeting in the evening. Now, that meeting could be market affecting if NATO members agree to step up their spending on defense. Assuming that they don't cut back spending elsewhere to pay for it, that would mean a more stimulative fiscal policy, just as the ECB starts tightening monetary policy. A loose fiscal, tight monetary policy mix is usually a recipe for a stronger currency. Then on Friday, there's a 2-day G7 summit. The communique will be issued and closing press conferences take place on Saturday. Now, these G7 meetings are no longer the main forum for international cooperation. The G20 has taken over that role. Nonetheless, with two newcomers in the club now, Trump and Francis Macron, this meeting could result in more drama than usual. So that's the Trump World Tour, which will probably be the main focus during the week. Now let's look at some of the other key events and releases to expect. Over the weekend, we'll get the results of the Iranian presidential election. If President Rouhani fails in his bid for re-election, that could put some downward pressure on oil prices at the opening on Monday. Eurozone finance ministers meet Monday to discuss the Greek bailout. They've said previously that they intend to work out an agreement at this meeting. Here, I think the risks are on the downside. Greece right now is pretty much off of everyone's radar screen, so if they do reach an agreement, it probably wouldn't help the euro much. But if they don't reach agreement, then it will be a bad sign and we could see some euro weakness. Meanwhile, back home, the Trump administration releases its formal budget request on Tuesday. The initial skinny budget request that was announced back in March didn't please the Republicans or the Democrats. It'll be interesting to see if they can manage to overcome anyone's objections this time with the revised, fatter request. The only major central bank meeting this week is the Bank of Canada on Wednesday. They're not expected to hike rates until a year from now, though, so there won't be much drama attached to this meeting. OPEC meets in Vienna on Thursday, followed by a meeting with key non-OPEC producers to discuss whether to extend their supply restraint agreement. Now, the big question really isn't whether they'll extend it. The question is whether they'll extend it for 6 months or for 9 months. A 6-month extension might see some profit-taking in oil, while a 9-month extension, on the other hand, could boost the price somewhat, at least temporarily. The pattern's been that the announcements are greeted with a rally in oil, but then over time the rally fades as people realize that these agreements don't really cut into the global oil glut that much. They just make room for the U.S. to expand its production. We have the usual range of central bank comments out during the week. The minutes of the May FOMC meeting will be released on Wednesday. That may give us more insight into what they're likely to do on June. As usual, several Fed officials will be speaking this week. The most important one will be Fed Governor Lyle Brainard, who hasn't given a public speech since before the last rate hike. She's known as one of the most dovish people on the FOMC, and so her views are of great interest because if even she thinks rates should go up, then probably there's a consensus on that view. Bank of Japan Governor Kuroda and former FOMC Chair Bernanke speak at a central bank conference in Tokyo on Wednesday morning, Tokyo time. As for the economic data, the main point will probably be the release of the preliminary purchasing managers indices for the Eurozone and US on Tuesday. Recently, the PMIs have been pointing to continued expansion. If they continue to do so, that could somewhat calm the risk off sentiment that we've been seeing recently. The German IFO survey, also out on Tuesday, is expected to show further improvement in sentiment towards the German economy. That could prove positive for the euro as well. U.S. indicators out during the week include new home sales, Richmond and Kansas City Fed manufacturing indices, advanced merchandise trade and wholesale inventories, durable goods, and the second estimate of first quarter GDP, which will probably be the big announcement of the week. GDP is expected to be revised up slightly. That could support the dollar, but it's not really that big a revision. There are no major indicators coming out from the UK during the week. Finally, Japan announces its trade figures on Monday and its key CPI figures on Friday. Inflation is expected to accelerate a tiny bit, but still remain well below target, so it probably won't be enough to boost the yen. This is Marshall Gittler urging you to get prepared before you trade.